Hi everybody, welcome back. If you don't know, my name is Cooper, and today we're going to be talking about 2025 interior design trends. I wanted to discuss what's coming in, what's going out, and which ones are timeless and which ones will be out of style in 6 months. And before we get started, I just wanted to give a little bit of a disclaimer. These are all trends that I've noticed coming in. These are not exactly defined by a certain list or publication, but just some things that I've noticed coming in and out of style. So the first interior design trend that I wanted to talk about is incorporation of bold colors. For years now, we've seen this kind of beige aesthetic in the mainstream, and personally, I'm just so tired of it. I've seen applications of it that look nice and whatever, but honestly, it's just overdone at this point, and personally, I feel like it lacks a little bit of personality. I've been really excited to see more bold colors entering the mainstream design space, and when we have trends, a lot of micro trends tend to emerge that are kind of like a subsection of that trend. And for the use of bold colors, we've gotten color drenching. So if you don't know what color drenching is, it's basically what it sounds like. You paint the walls, the ceiling, and the trim all the same color, and it can create for a really cool look sometimes, and other times it can be a little bit of a disaster. So as you could imagine, if you're color drenching something and you choose the wrong color, you're not in a good spot. When well thought out, I think color drenching can really add to a space. I think it adds an element of visual interest, uniqueness, and elevation that really brings it to a new level. I personally love seeing this in the application of a kitchen or a small little nook. I think it can create a really unique look. I would say my favorite colors are mostly like jewel tone colors. I feel like that realm of color looks the best when color drenching because it almost acts as a neutral. Because though we want to incorporate a pop of color, we don't want our eyes to be, just brought to the wall and the ceiling and not to anything else in our space. Because what if we have things around our apartment or house that we really love and we want to have our eyes drawn to? The next interior design trend I wanted to talk about is minimalism. And I know when you guys hear that, you're probably a little bit scared and you're like, Cooper, have you lost all your credibility? But just hear me out here. So when I say minimalism, I'm not talking about the all white interiors that are super sparse and have nothing out on the counter, nothing out on the table, all of that. I'm talking more along the lines of the principles of minimalism. A couple years ago, we saw a huge surge in minimalism in fashion and interior design, and a lot of that was just absolutely wiping every single thing out until you have pretty much a blank canvas. Post that, we got maximalism because we were all super unhappy with our hyper minimalist spaces. And so now we're kind of snapping back from that maximalist era, but into a kind of almost middle zone, but also towards the minimalist end of the spectrum. So I think the definition of minimalism that's coming into resurgence nowadays is just having things that are practical and useful around the house. I know that sounds crazy that that's a trend. It should be like just the norm, but actually, you know what? I think there is a trend that is kind of around. It's called normcore, which is just like normal. And I think that could be along the lines of what this form of minimalism takes. I support this trend. I think it's good. And I think honestly, we're due to have like a resurgence of practicality and usefulness because I think a lot of people, they go out and buy a lot of things for their home. And a lot of the times they're trying to fill space rather than fill space intentionally and meaningfully. And they end up with a lot of home decor around their space that they end up not liking because it doesn't speak to them and it doesn't spark an emotion. And so the real question is here, what do we think? Do we think this new form of minimalism is timeless or it's a trend and we're all going to get tired of it and just go back to one end of the spectrum? Personally, I think this form of minimalism is timeless. Do I think it's going to stay in the trend cycle forever? No. I think it will stand the test of time in regards to how it looks and how it operates and functions. The next interior design trend I wanted to talk about is ugly things. I absolutely love this trend, so I'm very excited to talk about it. So what is this, right? This would just be incorporating things that would be seen as traditionally ugly to a blind eye, and particularly when those things are standalone and not integrated into a space. Maybe a really cool, unique chair that, looks a little weird and funky, but, taking that weird and funky standalone chair and incorporating it into a design to really elevate it and make it the star of the show. I really love this. It introduces a lot of new silhouettes into design that I don't think we've seen before. I especially love this in accent pieces or statement pieces. So I think people, especially in my generation, are moving towards, really cool statement furniture. So like a statement couch, statement chair, statement table, even if you want to get crazy. Taking a risk and doing something cool, and I don't want to use the word edgy, but like, maybe out of the box. A possible example of this could be my bright red couch that I have behind me. Or, in my office, I have this really old tanker desk. And, standalone, people may say, oh, why would you buy that? That's ugly. The drawers don't open. I probably shouldn't have said that, but oops. Anyway, do I think this is trendy or timeless? I think if it's the right piece, it can be timeless, but I definitely think it's a case-by-case situation in regards to furniture. Because, saying an ugly piece of furniture is trendy or timeless is a generalization if I've ever heard one. Personally, for me, I think this is timeless, and I think I will always continue to incorporate really cool, funky things into my spaces. The next interior design trend I wanted to talk about is the reintegration of 19th century furniture. If you live under a rock, this could be probably the only reason why you don't know this, but there's been a huge resurgence of 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s furniture, and I've seen instances of it that are done well and done, not so well. So there's definitely a bit of a gray area here. When eras of furniture come back into style, there is a lot of reproduction done of it, and a lot of the reproduction tends to be very bad quality and kind of misinterpreting what the furniture pieces looked like and how they function. So for example, let's take a authentic mid-century chair and compare it to a reproduction mid-century modern chair. Just looking at them, you can tell the difference in quality. And unfortunately, the one made nowadays is lesser quality. What happens here is all of these furniture companies start coming out with mock mid-century furniture, and it doesn't look good. And I think a lot of people try to achieve the look of a certain decade in the past through this, and when you use the new furniture, it ends up looking pretty off and unfortunate. I think another thing to take into account here is something that is really important. If you've watched any of Paige Wassel's video, she's another interior design YouTuber, she talks a lot about not overly doing a certain decade of furniture because it starts to look like a theme. And honestly, I completely agree with her on that one. Do you want to walk into your house and have it look like a 1950s museum? I mean, probably not, I'm assuming. So it's best to kind of avoid buying all a certain decade of furniture, but I think what you can take from this is incorporating elements of it. Taking one really striking mid-century piece and incorporating it into your living room or your bedroom or, whatever. Bottom line is here, incorporate elements of a decade that you'd like instead of going all out on it and going crazy. I had made a TikTok about this and somebody left a comment that said, not all of us can go out and afford authentic furniture from a certain decade. And you're wrong. These reproduction pieces are so expensive. They're so expensive. For example, a reproduction mid-century modern chair, right? You go on to Wayfair, you go on to whatever. It's literally $300, you guys. That's ridiculous. And if you go onto Facebook Marketplace, you can find an authentic mid-century chair for $200, $250. Obviously, it's not going to be like first dibs level. It'll still be really nice, and at least it's from that decade, so it'll look natural. And the last home interior design trend that I wanted to talk about is not necessarily a trend, but it's more of something that's becoming popularized in 2025. You may seem a little confused when I say this. I think people are starting to build their homes around the idea that it should be a sanctuary for them. And I know what you're saying. Cooper, people have always been doing this, blah 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 blah. Okay, some people have, but it's becoming a lot bigger of a thing. Take for example the reintroduction of personality into spaces that we've had in 2025. People are starting to get sentimental with their homes. This is just something that I've picked up on. And really wanting it to be a cozy and warm space where they can let go. And so, I think a lot of other trends start to stem out of this idea but I think it is a main philosophy behind things. I think a lot of people interested in interior design tend to get so caught up in it that their house starts to look like a museum and feel like a museum, and you can't enjoy it anymore. Okay, everybody, now we're going to be talking about trends that are on their way out in 2025. The first interior design trend that's on its way out is all white and bleached oak interiors. Have I wanted to see these gone for such a long time. When it first came into style and I was like, what, 15? I am 20, so I'm not that old. Anyway, I liked it. I thought it was cute. I was like, okay, cute, whatever. But I'm just so tired of it. It's so overdone. It's so boring. I don't necessarily hate, the color white, or I don't necessarily hate bleached oak wood, but I just think that's all we've been doing for the past 6 years. Like, it's gotta go, you guys. With that has been a resurgence in darker wood tones, which I am so grateful for, and I'm so happy to have back. I just hope the same thing doesn't happen to them, because then I'm gonna be really sad. The next thing that it's on its way out in 2025 is open concept floor plans. I am not a fan of open concept floor plans, and I'm so tired of hearing about it. And if you know me, please don't be offended. I mean well when I say this, but I'm just tired of lying to people about their home renovations when they tell me about them. So many people will come up to me, no matter who it is in my life that I know that's doing a renovation on their home, and they're like, I'm doing a renovation on my house and I'm taking down the walls or blah 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 blah. And I actually start crying inside because it makes me so sad, especially if it's an older home. I think we're getting a little bit fatigued of this open concept floor plan. I think this has gone hand in hand with the bleached oak and white interiors. I think people are also gravitating towards well-defined separate spaces because it allows for more creative control and versatility when going about designing a space. What I mean by this is, if you have multiple rooms, you have a lot more creative freedom when you're designing. So you can do like a really cool, yellow room in there, and do a blue room and a purple room, and whatever. You can introduce more of a variety of colors without it looking like you're going overboard, which I think it's a lot harder to do if you have one large space, because things can kind of mush together if you're not using just a neutral color palette. And I talk about this in my video, how to make your space feel instantly cozy. I talk about sectioning off rooms. You can use area rugs, textiles, whatever. But I think people are just moving towards that in general. They want to feel cozy. They want to feel enclosed and warm when they go into their space. That is all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed the video. It was a fun one to do. Right now, as I post this, I will currently be in Italy working on an interior design project I'm doing over there. I'll tell maybe a little bit more about that in my next video, but as usual, you can find me on Instagram at Cooper Osinski Interiors, and you can visit my website, cooperosinski.com, where you can book a consultation with me and I can help you with any interior design issue that you have, or if you want to hire me as your designer or decorator, I would absolutely love that. That is all I have for you guys today. Bye.